a 20-hectare site on the island of Rousay in Orkney. It's owned privately, it's not owned by Rspb, so we've been working with the landowner. Prior to our intervention, it hadn't been managed at all for about 50 years. So we've come along, we have used external funding to fence the whole perimeter, it's about 1.5 kilometres of fencing. And we are working with a local farmer who grazes the site under a grazing plan, targeting conservation management for waders. Before, this was vegetation that was about this high, completely thick, dense and unsuitable for waders at all. So what's happened now, and this is a really good example of how cows and conservation grazing, when done, done in the right way, can create ideal wader habitat. So what's happened here is the cows have come in, they've grazed through quite a lot of the thick grass. So you've now got these kind of like shorter areas, which means that waders can move through, they can feed in some of these open bits that the cows have trampled down, and they can feed among the short vegetation. But what's also happened is the cows have left these kind of more tufty areas. So we've got this kind of like varied structure. These areas are really important because waders can nest in them. They like nesting in some of these longer tussocks because it's cover, they can hide the nest easier from predators, but also it's cover for chicks. So when chicks are walking around, they've got this cover, and if adults start alarming, they can go and hide in there. What's also happened here, which you can see, is obviously the cows create cow pats, and cow pats are an excellent source of invertebrates. So not only are they grazing, but they're also actually indirectly creating feeding areas for waders as well.
Good for here because they're not too big and they've got small feet and what have you. They don't make a great deal of impact on the land, and they'll also, because the Shetlands, they'll eat all kinds of different grasses and they'll do well on them. This has been a real bonus for us because obviously we have the land next door, and it allows us to bring them onto here and rest the land that we've got, and we can also see them improving the land here. It gets better the longer they're on here, which is great. So I like this win-win situation. We get the grazing and they actually improve the land. It's good all round.
Just starting to dig a scrape, because this is the very first few kind of bits being taken out. So during the spring, when the birds are breeding, this dries out. And it dries out at the key point when wader chicks are hatching and they need feed, they need areas to feed in. So the main idea here is to dig this deeper so it holds water for longer, and it creates a wet area for chicks and waders to feed in throughout the breeding season. So this is an example of the ideal foraging habitat that this pool was created for waders. You have the kind of shallow edge here where the water's dropped back slightly. That means it's, you know, for a bird that doesn't swim to feed, that means that it can now walk along that edge and it can access all the invertebrates just living in the edge of the water. The mud, and obviously where the cows have stood, you've got little pools as well, and the way obviously it's dropped back, you get these little kind of pockets of water, and all this is just, yeah, absolutely full of invertebrates, things like cranefly larvae. So the whole area now is just a nice, easy, reliable foraging area for waders to walk around in and get all the food they need throughout the breeding season. So we carried out baseline breeding bird surveys prior to any work occurring at all. Resurveyed it this year, and the numbers had gone up, well, yeah, significantly. So we went from there was no lapwing breeding here at all because it was unsuitable. This year we had 12 pairs after the first year. We had a similar kind of increase in curlew numbers, redshank, snipe, all moved onto the site in quite impressive numbers, and yeah, it's been quite the response, and we're obviously really pleased. A significant percentage of breeding lapwing and curlew in the whole of Scotland now are in Orkney, so it's definitely worth targeting here now while we've still got enough birds that when we do this kind of management work we can get that response. You need to get in now before that population gets too low. When you spend the winters putting funding bids in and you're doing all the admin and all the kind of reporting throughout, yeah, you go out in the spring and you see all the breeding birds and what difference it makes. Yeah, curlew there in the background. That's, you know, it definitely makes it all worth it. That's what you want to see. So, yeah, that's the most enjoyable part.